And this Hangout on Air is now live. If people who have never done a Hangout on Air wonder why I always say that, it's because that's the message that pops up when it goes live. Probably people didn't really care, but now they know whether they cared or not.
You're good for that.
Well, you know, somebody has to do it or not. I volunteered anyway. I didn't take as many notes for this episode and am a little bit, I don't know, my feelings of the episode may have been colored a little bit by the fact that I've been, I got like a lower back spasm after vacuuming yesterday, which sucks. And so I was actually off work today trying to find a position to lay down in without pain and unsuccessful most of the day. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's not good.
No. I mean, I think I'll be fine, but I'm not comfortable now. And it allowed me to go ahead and watch the episode and take notes, though.
But not enough.
Well, enough is subjective, right? It was less than usual. So we'll see if I missed stuff. It's possible that I did. But so in any case, we kind of knew something was going to have to happen this time just because Mike had his idol. So he, you know, the only way he goes home is if he does something really dumb, which would be, you know, enough of a thing on its own to say something happened in this episode.
Which was good. I'm glad something finally happened. That.
Mm-hmm. It sounded like you were going to continue that sentence.
Just glad something finally happened.
Yes. Something definitely happened at the end of last time. So they get back to camp and Mike just sits by the fire with a huge grin while the other 6 go off to have a private discussion.
It made me think, since we didn't even actually talk about that by Mike showing them he had the idol, he forced them, he was the 7th person at that point. So they have to do something this episode. Like, we didn't even catch that really in our discussion.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, you know, it was right there and we didn't really discuss it.
I mean, I just didn't even think about it. Like, oh, wow, something has to happen between these 6 because they know he has an idol. So they have to start turning on each other next week. I didn't realize that. So I was happy. That was what my emotions at that time. Man, I wish I'd even known. I would have been even more anticipating this episode.
Well, it definitely made for some good drama, finally, because we had a couple of episodes in a row where, you know, stuff would seem to happen, but then, like, it never actually amounted to all that much. But in any case, there's sort of initially some denial and some confusion about who actually voted for who. But then ultimately the truth comes out. Will is...
It was funny.
He makes a great big show of, all right, everybody, let's not freak out. Because if we do, then people are more likely to be mad at me because I was one of the people who flipped.
Yeah, we don't need to do this, guys. We don't need to do this at all, because then you'll find out about me.
Yeah. And then he also makes a big show of telling Dan, okay, here's what happened. I'm going to be honest with you. And Dan says, I think, you know, like, what do you say in that situation? You know, it's like, I think he knows the game well enough that regardless of what he is actually feeling, the thing that you say is, oh yeah, I get it. It's a game. It's fine.
Yeah. Totally okay, man. Yeah. Totally okay.
Yeah. I got the impression though that, I don't know. I feel like I'm having trouble reading him because I was just about to say that I had the impression that he actually was okay with it, but then I'm actually not super sure because he also seems to have actually been surprised to find out that he is at the bottom. And I'm not sure who he thought was at the bottom instead.
I mean, I still believe, like what I said last time, is I think that he was so laser focused on keeping this 6 together that he didn't actually calculate what happens at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And this forced him to do that, although not enough to forgive Mike, which I think would have been a good play of his.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's that ship may have just sailed by sheer force of how much he's rationalized the whole thing to himself. And it also may be true too. I don't know. I wonder how much at this point Mike's still been trying to convince him of that. What are you doing? It's making weird noises.
Oh, sorry. I was wiping a stain off the computer. I didn't know it was going to do that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if Mike is still kind of trying to press for that or if he's now just kind of flipped over to the practical argument because Dan hasn't been responding to the loyalty thing.
Well, and that's why I think it's not necessarily the loyalty thing that he needs. Even if the practical argument, you know, Dan working with him and someone else, you know, can start to make moves and actually, you know, I just thought Dan would have identified that clearly there's something else going on over there that he's not a part of, that everybody else had calculated this a little farther than he had. And not to say that he should have like voted with Mike this time, but he didn't even seem to open the door, whereas Carolyn did, you know.
Well, it may be that it's still just a matter that he feels like almost no matter what, Mike is the one that nobody wants to go to the end with because they're worried he'll win. And so it may be that even if he would theoretically be open to rekindling the emotional relationship, the idea of realigning with him is just a non-starter.
Yeah. I'm not sure that no one wants to go to the end with him. I'm not positive that Carolyn hasn't worked out that, because she also has pretty good relationships with a lot of the people, not everybody, but the people that she is pissed off are going to be pissed off at her no matter who she's up against.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, still, if you're playing your odds, like Mike has a lot of things that he could say in his favor in a final tribal council compared to several other. I mean, you think anyone, Carolyn included, would rather have Mike in that final tribal council over Sierra, Will, or Dan? Or even Rodney? Rodney's a weird wild card at this point, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of a weird computation at this point, like, because, you know, if you just, the juries are not as simple ever since like Russell, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not always, if people are frustrated with you, sometimes they vote to not give you the money. So you have to be careful, because if you go with somebody who's fairly, you know, non-complacent like a Sierra, I don't think as a viewer watching it, but you have to be careful of that, you know?
Yeah, I suppose.
And if other people are thinking it's going to be Mike next, and then you're the next biggest threat to win one of Carolyn's problems, you know, which is why she got rid of Tyler, because it was the same thing. Like, well, now's our opportunity, but because I think with the 7 that were left there, the 3 with the best chance to win were Tyler, Carolyn, and Mike.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan was on the bottom of the alliance. I don't necessarily know that he obviously, you know, they had the opportunity to get rid of him this time, and they did not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they're starting to think like that. So for Carolyn's perspective, now that she's gotten rid of one of the threats, but now the odds are starting to go against her, she doesn't have a new ally.
Yeah.
So Mike might be a good new ally for her.
I guess I see what you're saying, but
I think that's why she opened the door.
I felt like she just wanted to get rid of Tyler, specifically Tyler, and not about opening the door to Mike. I think it was really just about Tyler knows she has an idol and could tell somebody, and better to get him out before that happens.
Well, she did specifically say after having a conversation with Mike that.
Well, okay, I suppose that's true.
Yeah, she thinks she can work with him, but she's not sure it's the right time to do it yet. But she's definitely. So when I say open the door, she has started to change her demeanor towards Mike.
Well, that's true. I guess I just can't imagine. Like I cannot imagine any scenario at this point where Mike makes it to the end without having won every immunity between now and then. I don't think any of them want him to stay any longer. Like they want to get him out the very first time they can.
Probably true. I guess maybe I'm also partly being hopeful.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm hopeful too, but I feel like I don't think Carolyn would have voted out Tyler if Mike was still available as an option.
I agree.
Yeah. But so in any case, we have Dan making a promise to Will that he'll keep him around, which is weird just because we hadn't really had much clue of what the relationship between those two guys even was, because we don't have Will actually hardly saying anything anymore.
No, he's he's not very interesting.
No, except that he says that Rodney has a birthday really weird. It's somebody's birthday. It was like, what just happened? It was funny because in a Q&A with Probst last week, when asked, can you give us a tease of what happens in the episode that we just watched, he says, "It's Rodney's birthday!" ! And I was thinking, I bet that's a thing. And sure enough, it was a thing.
It was definitely a thing.
Yeah. So we have a couple of people apparently telling Rodney that if they get the opportunity to give up a reward so that he can go, that they are volunteering to be, to do that. We see Will say it specifically, and I think there was an implication that Carolyn said it too, but I don't recall if we saw anyone else explicitly say it.
Yeah, and it seemed like Sierra had said something along the lines of, like, if I get to choose people, I'll choose you. Yeah. Because that was sort of her defense, is like, well, if this has been an individual, it's one thing, but this is like a team thing, so we want to do this team thing.
Yeah, well, and I can definitely see how that's a different scenario, because it's one thing to say, I'm getting to go and I get to pick someone and I'll definitely pick you, versus I'm going to give up my spot for you. Will says that he would do that, and
because will never have a spot.
Oh, he could. He could be on a team that wins.
That's highly unlikely.
Fair enough. We actually do have 2 live viewers at the moment. That's great. Usually we get people, watching belatedly, but welcome. If you guys are watching from the Google Plus events page, you can use the Q&A app to ask us questions live if you would like, or you can continue to just watch. That's fine too. So let's see, where are we then? So Rodney, though, is clearly left with the impression that his getting to go on the reward is pretty much a guarantee. Like, no matter what happens, it's going to happen. That seems to be what he's thinking going in.
Sort of. He also says that he has 0.0% trust in these people to actually deliver.
Yeah, the way he said it, though, sounded to me like what he meant was that he does completely trust them. he said it in a strange way. The impression I got was that he did trust them, though.
Okay.
That's was my read of it when I watched it. In fact, it wasn't even until you just said that I realized he said it strangely, because I think just from the context, I assumed he was expressing his sincere faith that they were going to live up to their promise. Because why wouldn't they? It's his birthday, after all.
Yes.
Why? You take care of someone on their birthday, yeah. Oh my God, it's just like it's totally a little kid thing to do. This at the end when he's like, it started out the best birthday ever, now it's the worst birthday ever, and that's just totally like a 5-year-old's emotional range. It's kind of like, hey, it's your birthday, it's the best day ever. Oh no, you stubbed your toe, now it's the worst day ever. Oh, but look, there's cake, it's the best day ever. Oh, but it's yellow cake and I want a chocolate cake, it's the worst day ever.
Yeah. I'm not going to pressure anybody, but it is my birthday, and I haven't been on a reward yet, and I'm really hungry, and it's my birthday, but no pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pressure you guys, because I know that only a big jerk would not do it, and I know you guys aren't big jerks, right? So I'm just gonna, I don't need to pressure you. I'm just gonna remind everybody a few more times that it's my birthday, and then let you guys decide not to be big jerks. Yep. So we didn't really talk about the actual challenge. There's the obstacle course and the ball fling. So there's the ribbons, which was kind of fun. I feel like they've probably done that before, but not recently. And then, of course, at one point, Rodney left the balls behind, and he had to go back through the net a second time.
Yes.
And then it was all set up to like, there was the whole moment of they're falling. Mike's doing the ball fling, and he's falling behind. Carolyn and Sierra are protesting that he's not letting them try. But then he pulls ahead and does it. And it's interesting position that he's in now, where he really doesn't have to care anymore whether they think he's being fair. It's kind of like, oh, what are you going to do? Vote me out?
Yeah, that is true.
And at the same time, too, I think once you've been going for a while, there's an element of, if I switch with you, you're just going to have to figure out how to do it from scratch. That's not going to be helpful.
Right.
So just because they're frustrated doesn't necessarily mean it's actually the right thing to switch out. And then, as it proves, although this one, it seemed like there was, I don't want to say luck, but there was a lot of randomization in this one, just because it didn't seem like they had much control of the aiming. It was more just kind of like playing pachinko.
Yeah, because there were some that didn't even look close. Like, it's not like they were swishing them. They were bouncing off all those planks, kind of stuck out, and it was kind of, it was somewhat random. Mm-hmm. So, but either way, they won.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. This is we talked already a little bit about Rodney's speech there, but of course, Sierra and Carolyn, who after all have no actual obligation to him, given that they earned this reward, and there's no it's okay. We covered that really. They have the reward, and so Mike, Carolyn, and Sierra get to go, give toys to orphans and stuff. I I did laugh a little bit at one point when Mike is playing with the soccer ball, and he's talking about all the little children, and the kids that are there in the shot with him are clearly like 14, 15 years old, if not older. But then again, of course, the dialogue we were hearing was not from that shot. So it was just a weird editing choice to have teenagers on screen when he says the little children. And then, of course, Mike expresses that he's very glad to be there with them. This is who he definitely wants to be there with. And I guess I could see that specifically on the basis of, like, I don't know, he hasn't had the personality quarrels with them that he's had with some of the others, I guess.
Yeah.
But this is where you're right that, Carolyn is saying, oh, you know what, I'm seeing a side of Mike that I hadn't really seen before. Maybe I could work with him after all. Which as we discussed, I think is different than saying she might be willing to work with him if she has to, but I don't think she wants to bring him along any further than necessary.
No, I agree. And I think that she's done a good job of kind of, like I said, opening that door so she has that option if necessary, that he's not going to turn down her help.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. So this idea that she doesn't have to just shut him down every time he tries to talk to her.
Right.
And then, of course,
she voted for who he wanted all gone, even though she also wanted that, she has that option. She's done a good job keeping her options open.
Mm-hmm. Well, I honestly, I feel like Carolyn is the best player out there right now. Mike is questionable because he's played really well with a couple of obvious dips, as we've talked about in the past. Carolyn's been pretty consistent. She's not been making a lot of big moves, but she made one tonight, voting out her ostensible ally when they could have gone for an easier target in Dan, especially given that Dan has this, the double votes thing. So she could have gone along with what Tyler wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But she's also sitting here on the reward thinking, Rodney's going to be mad when we get back, isn't he? And my next note is just, he is mad. So he's stomping around like a toddler who hasn't gotten his way. Washing dishes on my birthday. And he repeated that a couple of times, and it's just kind of like, God forbid. Washing dishes? What a disgrace. What are your friends going to say when you get back home?
Yeah, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. There is a deleted scene video that's him talking about what he does on his birthday at home. And apparently his family does actually treat it like a pretty big deal. They have a whole big family barbecue, and then he goes out and gets hammered with his friends. And then they pull a couple of broads to go back to the jacuzzi, and then go out back drinking again. Classy.
He is classy. That's one thing.
Anyway, though, even Dan at this point is kind of rolling his eyes at the camera and just saying, it's like, I get it, why he's mad, why he feels like he has a right to be mad. But overreacting.
I like when even for me, he feels like he's overreacting. I was like, yes, and you are well aware of how to act like an insensitive jerk. Mm-hmm. And he has definitely made you Yeah.
And so he actually comes up with this plan that he wants to pretend that he's so mad that he wants to quit so that they can try to trick Mike into not using his idol. Which, I don't know, theoretically is not necessarily a terrible plan, except that they haven't even had the immunity challenge yet, so it might be moot anyway. I loved, though, Dalton Ross's suggestion that he wishes Mike had played along all the way up to tribal council just to make him keep having to say it, to keep up the act.
Yeah. He'd be like, Rodney, why is it exactly you want to go home?
Yeah.
Tell everybody.
Because even still, even though Mike doesn't buy it for a second because Rodney is a terrible actor, even when half of what he's saying is actually what he really feels. So, and at the same time, we have to have Sierra and Carolyn sitting around hearing for even longer about how pissed he is. And even if he kind of had come to them to say, I'm just pretending, okay? But you guys are bitches. He doesn't say that, I don't think. But yeah. No. Anyway,
that's part of, I mean, honestly, that's part of why his acting job was so bad, because when he's really mad, he curses and throws shit like that around.
Yeah, he gets the pixelated mouth.
Like, yeah. And so here he was like being like so, PC about it, oh, I am just so mad. I can't believe, and he's not being like, I'm particularly disappointed in you, Mama C, like he was saying earlier. All of a sudden it got a lot more vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of why it was so easy to identify,
Well, and also just, I feel like Mike has got to be thinking, even if you believe Rodney that that's what he wants, why on earth would the others go along with that when they could still get out Mike? That's not how that ever works. You have people want to quit, but when they ask to be voted out, they almost never get voted out because everybody knows it's like, oh, well, if they're not even trying to play anymore, then we could just drag them along however long we want and get out someone who's a real threat.
Yeah.
So if he's not,
I particularly like Mike's strategy of calling his bluff.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was like, well, then quit. Oh, I mean, I'm not a quitter. Just want you to vote me out. No, go ahead and leave.
Yeah. And I'm going to go on the record, and I've expressed this before, but I believe sincerely asking everybody to vote you out is quitting. It's just half-assed chicken shit quitting.
I agree. So you might as well have just quit. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so it was all a ruse. Anyway, let's see. So we have Tyler reminding the audience that Carolyn has her idol, but then also telling, talking to her about it. And from some of his interviews since the show, he apparently, in hindsight, recognizes that he was being too trusting with her. He really thought that it was possible that she would play it for him. But clearly he was mistaken. And he wasn't broken up about it, but it was just, it's like, that's where I was at, is that I really thought that we were kind of there as a team and that she would be willing to play it to keep me.
Yeah, he's weirdly robotic about a lot of this stuff. Like,
well, Dalton Ross certainly says so.
He did. And that's why I brought it up, because it's true. Like, he's very even keel about everything, and it's just like, and that's fine. It's part of why he was doing well, but
Mm-hmm.
also seen as a threat.
Yeah, he's not. He's not overreacting to things. He's not letting the emotion get to him the way some of the others are. And that's definitely valuable. I don't know. I see where the idea comes from, but I don't know. That's never how it kind of played for me. I didn't never read it that way. for me, it almost just seemed more like he's just kind of an easygoing guy. He doesn't freak out, when he has internal resources that he is relying on, in order to not have an outward freak out. That was kind of just how I always read that.
I agree with the latter part of what you said. I don't think he is an easygoing guy by any means, because he goes into every conversation with, how can I exploit this to my benefit? Or who, I don't know that he says on the front end, but as soon as he finishes the conversation, he's like, who can I go tell? Who can I go, who should I share? He's definitely pretty ramped up internally. He just doesn't outwardly show it, which is good, I hope, and he's not psychotic. But and that's why I kind of, that resonated with me, that robotic thing, because he is, you can tell that he's passionate about playing this game well and like doing well and like, working to save himself and working to like stir things up. Like he's doing a lot of things that require an inner passion for the game, but he's not displaying that outwardly, which is part of why he could get away with just running and telling people conversations instantly, because he didn't sound sketchy about it. Like he just sounded like matter of fact, like, hey, here's what happened. Unfortunately, I think that's what it is, the fact that everybody knew he was always working. Like you couldn't have a conversation with him and not expect it to go get worked, And that made him a threat,
Yeah. It's interesting when you start having people get targeted as a threat, primarily just because they have maintained a relatively non-toxic relationship with almost everybody. You know what I mean? It's like you only trust someone if they're fighting with at least one other person. That actually just reminds me of, I'm not going to get into the whole story, but just I get along with people at work for the most part. It's relatively rare for me to have any kind of a real substantial personality conflict in the workplace. But there have been times that it happened. And one time it went to the point where I requested to be put on another project and was thankfully had that request granted. And I was feeling really down about it because I had kind of prided myself on my ability to get along with people. And I felt like this was kind of a failure in that regard. But then what I discovered is that like almost everyone else that I talked to about it seemed to view my inability to get along with this guy as like a plus. Like they respected me more because I also didn't get along with this guy. So my complaints about him were not, they were shared by many others. Anyway, that's all irrelevant, really. So we've got, let's see, where are we? So Mike is in this position where, theoretically he could win the immunity challenge, but if he doesn't, he is absolutely going to play his idol at this point. Or, they have to assume that he will, because it would be dumb not to. They have enough numbers to go ahead and give him enough just in case votes that he still goes home. So I feel like, yeah, he has to play it here. I don't think there was ever going to be any question. The only way he wouldn't have to play it is if he won the challenge.
Right. Which I was rooting for. But.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, it's funny that we talked a little bit about the various things intended to try to make the challenge last time more fair in terms of percentage of body weight and all of that. Whereas this one is really kind of, at least in that regard, there's not any like allowances made for people who are, bigger or taller or whatever. It's pretty much just, it's a lot of the same, the endurance of the grip strength is a big chunk of what you're doing. But I don't know. I'm not complaining. I'm just observing that it's different from the other one, because the other one, it was all based on a percentage of body weight. Whereas this one, it's just like, nope, this is your actual body weight. Just, I don't know. I'm saying random things that probably don't mean anything. Am I making any sense at all?
Yes, they're mixing up how they select to these sort of endurance weight challenges and body weight challenges, and I'm okay with that. Like, I like that they kind of they're keeping it somewhat random, as to what skill is required. Because if it's always only one skill, then one particular person could do very well. And so, but I like that, both Mike and Carolyn clearly are the best regardless of how you do it. So it was an interesting, almost like A/B test as to whether you do this percentage body weight and male versus female, or you do it just straight, like this is your own body weight. The results ended up identical, essentially.
Well, because I think ultimately some of the nuance is different, but it was still an endurance challenge primarily focused around grip strength.
Right. Around some sort of body weight thing, whether it's your old body weight or your current body weight or your,
The only real note I had about this challenge was just that I laughed with how suddenly Will fell in. I just feel like usually we get, close-ups of someone's hands starting to slip, and then, then we get the shot, whereas it's like they almost missed Will going in just because it just happened like, it's like, and he's in the water. Probst was in the middle of a sentence.
I also noticed that, Dan was talking, Probst was like, is it because you've been working a lot with your hands? And he's like, well, that, and I got a lot of bug bites. And then it went back to him, and he did. He had,
I know, it was gross.
It was so bad. I mean, I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. I did notice that too. I wondered at the time, and then forgot to even think about it more, but I wondered if everyone's hands kind of look like that, or if his are,
because I did check that at the time, and his were dramatically different than everybody else's.
Maybe
it's like he stuck his hand in like an ant nest or something. I don't know what he did.
Or maybe he's worse about scratching them when he gets the bites. And so that's why he has the ones that look kind of like scabs and scabbed over, and they're like big and gross looking, rather than just a little bump that camera might not read so much.
Yeah, true. That could be it.
In any case, he does acknowledge that it is his own fat ass ultimately too, not just the bug bites on his hands. But so in any case, Carolyn does.
My boss had his annual physical this week, and I was like, "How'd it go?" And he goes, "Other than me being a complete fat ass, I'm pretty healthy." I was like, "Well, I don't really have anything to say to that."
Yep. Boy, that's a tough one, because you don't even want to say that's good, because he kind of puts both things in there.
Yeah, he spun it in a point where I really didn't have anything to say. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Well, I suppose you could say, well, healthy is good, but then that also kind of leaves but wait. Are you saying that being a fat ass isn't good? I have a stomachache. I have to go home now.
That's what I was kind of like. I was like, well, that's great. I mean, I didn't know what to say. I mean, you're right. You are a fat ass, so you should probably fix that. I mean, I have nothing to say there. So I just kind of awkwardly walked away.
So in any case, Carolyn does win immunity again. And so she she talks about, splitting it to, force Mike to use his idol, but then to get Tyler out, which is in fact what actually happens. She's also seems to have some wrinkle about it that where she's hoping that Dan will go ahead and use up his advantage, but it wasn't clear to me how that was supposed to happen. Like, why would he? Maybe she was just wishful thinking. Like, if he thinks he's in trouble, maybe he'll use it.
Right, and it sounds like they're not 100% advantage is, which I guess I didn't realize.
Well, Tyler definitely knows, and I'm pretty sure he told Carolyn, so at least they know. I think, well, see, everyone knows he has some advantage because they saw him win it in the auction.
Oh, that's right, and Tyler didn't tell everybody.
Yeah. So Tyler and Carolyn know what it is. Dan obviously knows. Everyone else knows there's something, but they probably don't know the details. Yeah, but I had to remember, too, that everybody knows that he has some advantage because that was the whole thing at the auction. The whole thing, they ended up with the three-way tie that had to draw rocks to see who would get it because they all had the same amount of money left.
Yeah. And for him to need to use his advantage at this point, more people would have to be complicit. So you're right. It doesn't make sense. Because I think even if he had Mike, it would be 3 votes of 7. It doesn't do anything. Or 3 votes of 8, actually, because of the...
Well, what I mean is what I think she was hoping was that Dan would maybe still be worried enough that something was going to happen to him that he would use both his votes in an effort to make that not happen to him.
Oh, wait, yeah, no, because I guess if he was worried that something was happening to him and he did believe they were splitting votes to Mike, then it would be relevant.
Yeah.
He could have voted off if everybody was gunning for him. He could have voted off Tyler. Now makes me think that Tyler was the right move for more reasons, because unless you totally blindside Dan, he can stop himself from getting voted off when you're splitting the votes to Mike. So this is not only was this a good choice from a strategic perspective, it was also a very good choice from what's from Dan's advantage. It actually went this way than how Tyler had proposed, which I hadn't thought through until I just kind of talked through that. Because if Dan spooked, Tyler goes. And although, sorry, I'm having this kind of armchair survivor in my head. Although that might have been the better play, is
to make Dan use his...
Tyler gone, make Dan do it by using his advantage. You still get the result you want, and Dan's gone.
Right. So, because the 3 votes for Tyler were Carolyn, Sierra, and Mike.
Yeah.
Right. So, I don't know. It would have had to be a complicated negotiation because that would have required shifting all over the place in terms of who were going to be the 4 votes for Mike, right?
Not necessarily if you're all complicit in it.
But they had the guys voting for Mike, including Dan. And so if they were going to try to be playing it to make Tyler or Dan vote for Tyler, that's a different plan in terms of how they're splitting up the votes. And it's not, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm saying that would have kind of required a different set of negotiations than the ones they had. Because Dan didn't even vote for Tyler at all. He voted for Mike.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to have a different setup. You'd have to have, Yeah, you'd have to have them both thinking that however it goes, is going towards them, and Dan then freaking out and using his thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you could have done it. It would have been difficult, but that would have been the ultimate play here, is to convince Dan that he's the one getting all the votes, force him to use that advantage, and then he gets rid of Tyler or whatever, and and Tyler's gone and Dan's advantage is gone. So and so maybe Carolyn thought of all that, but thought that the way to orchestrate that was more complicated than the value that it had.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So let's see. Yeah, so she said something about the idea that Dan might use his advantage, but I didn't seem like there was any actual planning taking place to try to make that happen. In the meantime, what Tyler's plan is that he's working with Will about the idea of targeting Dan, but it's also not obvious how that was even supposed to work because neither Will nor Tyler voted for Dan. They voted for Mike. So it's a weird setup where people, so it was a blindside in this case because if he had had any clue that he was in danger, why would he have not voted for someone else? You know what I mean? The only reason to vote for Mike at this point is that you believe the plan is working and that it's going to turn out in your favor.
Correct.
And that means both Dan and Tyler were in that same boat. There is that they both trusted that, it's, I don't know. There's some weirdness going on there in terms of what Tyler thought was going to happen. Did he think that Sierra and Carolyn were going to be voting for Dan? He must have.
Yeah.
But he talked about it with Will, and then neither of them actually voted for Dan. So it must have just been Carolyn and Sierra convinced Dan that they were voting for Tyler and Tyler that they were voting for Dan.
Which is, again, why I think that Mike is not totally out. While it might be wishful thinking, he comes into play a little bit more if you start doing stuff like that.
I'm not saying that people might try to use him for their own ends. I'm just saying nobody wants to take him to the end. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
If they feel like they need his vote to get past some point, they might use him, but they don't want him at the end.
You've made the classic blunder. You said that he had to win every immunity to make it to the end. He doesn't have to win every immunity. He only has to win the ones where they're not using his vote.
Fair enough. I still think that's the most likely, is that if he loses an immunity, that he gets voted out.
I have logically defeated your argument.
You have logically pointed out that there is a small chance that something other than what I think will happen will happen.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Well played. So in any case, this is a short episode.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happens when I take sparser notes.
I mean, and I think we covered all of the main things that happened. So
yeah, it's just, I don't know. Was it a simpler episode? We just didn't discuss some of the things in as much exhaustive detail.
Or do you pontificate too much on these shows?
Well, again, as before when we talked about whether I took enough notes, enough pontificating is subjective. So in any case, though, yeah, I think we're kind of wrapped up here. Tyler goes home. He was blindsided. He didn't see it coming. Next time is the penultimate episode, and the alliance is crumbling. So we'll see what happens there. But now Mike no longer has his idol. Carolyn Carolyn still has hers, and Dan still has his advantage. So there's still an awful lot of wackiness that could ensue.
Correct. Oh, we should talk about the next season.
Yes, definitely. I haven't looked at the list, but apparently the list is up that there are 32 candidates that can be voted from for 20 slots of who gets to get a second chance, so to speak. And there is a valid question to be asked, because the whole the whole pretense of it is that it is a second chance for non-winners. But both Carolyn and Mike are on the list, so is that a spoiler that they don't win? Probst, when posed that very question, said, maybe. He said it exactly like that, too. That's a quote.
Who could win other than those two unless they both get knocked out before the end?
That might happen.
I cannot imagine someone else winning right now. Like, it's hard.
Well, I mean, there's still 4 other people there. But yeah,
those people are not that interesting.
Dan, Will, Rodney.
If fucking Dan wins, I may not watch next season.
Boy, You know what maybe they would need to institute is the ability for the final jury to vote that nobody gets the money. It's like they want to vote no winner.
Oh my God. That would be a hell of a thing. I've seen the seasons that these women are in. I have no idea who they are.
One of the things that it has occurred to me, though, with something like this is my guess is that the 32 are evenly split between men and women. But are they going to make that happen? Like, is it going to be a strict like number of votes, or is it going to be the top 10 men and the top 10 women? You know what I mean? It's like, are they going to enforce the balance or not?
Interesting.
Probably there's somewhere it's going to have the fine print to explain that. Just to follow up on my implying that all Probst said was maybe regarding Carolyn or Mike. Basically, he said it is for non-winners, but that's not necessarily a spoiler, because if one of them were to win, they would just be removed from the competition here. So at the same time, it's like, I don't know. We'll see. Who knows? He did also at least act like he was surprised by the question. So who knows there? It was in text. It's hard to get a read on his facial facial expression and so on. But yeah, that's an interesting idea. The idea of having, an all-star type season, but having it be audience selected. I feel like I will want to actually research the people that I don't remember. Maybe even go back and look at my old notes and stuff.
Yeah, because there's some I definitely remember, and some I'm like, I feel like I should remember, but I don't. Mm-hmm. Like Troy's, I remember.
Yeah. There's been so many seasons, it's easy to have them kind of blur together, especially because not everybody ends up being memorable.
Yeah. Joe's on there too from this season.
Oh, is he? Well, I guess we already know he's out though, so.
Yeah.
I think I saw Shireen's picture somewhere too, but I hadn't looked at the whole list.
Brad Culpepper, I remember him.
Oh, yeah.
Cass is on.
Oh, nice. Chaos Cass.
Yep. Spencer.
Nice.
Woo.
Oh, there's some good people I wouldn't mind seeing again.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot from.
Well, I imagine they're still probably focusing on more recent seasons, just because, people from older seasons would probably have.
I mean, there's some, like, I've heard of Kimmy from Australian Outback.
That was a long time ago, though. So that's
season 2.
Yeah.
Kelly Wigglesworth from season 1. There's a lot of people from like the first and second season. That's crazy. Oh, Shireen's on here. I don't know that she's going to get a ton of votes. So is Mike. Oh, yeah, you already said that. Yeah. And Max.
Max. Max came up in something I was reading last week, and it took me like 10 minutes before I even remembered who he was. It's like, oh, yeah, Max, duh. But I just mean he kind of, as soon as he was out of sight, out of mind.
Well, either way, I'm excited for it. I think.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. Well, I think we'll have to we should independently research and then announce who we want to vote for.
Yes.
Do you want to try to come back and do that for next time, or we can save that for finale?
Finale's so long already. I think we could just save it for next time.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So that is an exciting new what a twist for next season. And next episode's the second to last episode. We're coming right up on the finale.
I know.
Yeah. It always goes by so fast. So in any case, I think that's probably it for this episode. And we'll be back next week.